interested in this being a play about, we were just interested in telling the story as opposed to making it a play about gender. So I think very early on in the process, we decided that the gender question was not as important to us as making this story, which we all related to in so many ways, the version of the story that all 7 of us could tell. Because it's not a story of 7 people. So this is very much our version of this story, which we believe is a very universal, even in the relationships between the men and women. So yeah.
We've all been asked to stab our best friend. All in ways.
We also didn't feel like we had we didn't feel the need to hide the fact that we were women, and we felt like that was pretty clear. So it became, by sort of eliminating that question when you see a cast of all women, and allowing the text to be what it originally is, despite we remade some cuts, but for the most part we were just working with the text, then it becomes a story about humans and human struggle and what that power struggle is, as opposed to the male-female dynamics of the show, which come out still because they're written to the text. I mean, there are only two female characters, one of whom kills herself and the other disappears. So, kind of bleak.
Also, by the same token, historically, the characters are male, and that's very, very important. Because it's a world of,
But also
this world doesn't exist.
Yeah, but also, like, interestingly, we always say this. So this is a play, you know, a historical play, but in Shakespeare's time, when it was originally performed, it would have been performed by all men because there were no female actors. So it's not, as much as this is different towards the historical aspects of this text, in the history of Shakespeare's play, having an all female cast is,
it's just inverted.
Inverted, yeah.
Something that I remember Ashley and Kat, who actually kind of like started this entire project rolling, mentioning with regards to why we wanted to do a play that was mostly men with only 2 female characters, as Kelsey mentioned, was that we were interested in what it's like to actually speak the text of these male characters. Well, they're phenomenally written male characters. Shakespeare writes a ton of phenomenal male and female characters, but it's a very rare opportunity as a woman doing classical theater to have the opportunity to speak these words in these texts. To speak, period, and to not be named either Portia or I don't know the other
But
ones,
there's some incredible text that is
It's
traditionally and arbitrarily assigned to men that we get to say, which is really cool.
The idea originated about a year and a half ago, but then
a year and a half.
We first did a workshop of it.
we're not all together.
We did
till
a
year
workshop
ago.
of it where we presented only the first half, like right up until we did some of the funeral orations, and then we ended it there. And then Gallatin was lovely and picked it up and sort of said, here, be our main stage production for the fall. And that was our second iteration of it. And then Lineage sort of brought us over, and this is our third. So thank you so much to Lineage and Brian over there and everyone else.
And Jen,
Part of the impetus for this whole thing to begin with actually was an all-female production of this show that was actually set in a women's prison that the Don Marr Warehouse production company in the UK did about 2 years ago, that Catherine heard about when she was over in the UK, and then they did it at St. Anne's Warehouse, which is a performance space in Brooklyn. And Catherine and I actually saw that production when we were first sort of starting to mull over all of these ideas, and so that was super inspirational for us, and sort of all of the women that are involved in that company and their philosophy. And I think like just the way in which they approach the work is very different from us, but was really exciting, and to sort of know that we are, it's a grand statement to say that we're sort of in that same journey with them, but in a sense we are, and so that's been really neat as well.
It's not uncommon for women to do this show.
And I also think that it's important to say that what I think, I'm sure there has been, I don't know, but I'm sure there has been an all-female cast who's just done this play. But I think what's important to say about the Don Marr Warehouse production is that they set it in a prison. So it was the play Julius Caesar, but being done in a prison.
Yeah.
And so they set up a space in which it would make sense that this play would be done by all women, whereas I think what we instead diverted paths a little bit was, instead of this being a space where, you know, there's an explanation for why we're all women,
we don't justify it.
Yeah.
So in that production, they were females in prison putting on the play Julius.
Yeah.
Right, in a female person.
Yeah.
And again.
Sometimes people would just say, if we were working on a scene, I want to direct this. And so then, I mean, it took a long time to get to that point where we were like, oh, we actually need a person to be in charge of the scene. And so then it would kind of be like all questions defaulted to that person, so that at least the actors can go to one specific person. And then if, like, the rest of us, because all of us always were at every rehearsal, if the rest of us had anything to say about the scene or something that we wanted to see or a different thing tried a little differently, we would go to the person who was directing it and then like whisper in their ears so that the actors would get distracted, and then they would.
That was
Okay,
sort of
so
once we
that-
had figured it out.
That was
though.
like-
Yeah, that was like maybe last. Like,
This is our directing process.
Yeah,
Like,
that
everyone-
was like the last like
Yeah.
3 months of this
Yeah.
sort of process. But up until then, it was pretty collectively directed, which was
Slow.
chaos, but relatively productive in
Yeah.
some weird way.
But also really fun because we had
Oh,
like
yeah.
the big paper exercise, or with somebody's
Oh, yeah.
laptop, we have a document going with running notes. So during a run, you could just go up to the computer, type your notes in, and then at the end we'd go through all of them. And that was really fun, like charging over to the computer. I just had a thought. No.
Yeah, and it's been amazing to develop a vocabulary that's pretty like just rapid fire understood between the 7 of us. It does make us sort of impenetrable when new people get added to the group to try to figure out how to interact with all 7 of us when we're trying to make a decision.
So we won't be holding auditions.
But it's been really informative and really exciting because of that. So.
We've sort of been a little like microcosm of a collective ensemble experience.
Thing.
Because we come, none of us come from having much experience as a collective ensemble. And so we've learned a lot, and it's great because we're in college, or most of us are. So we can still learn. This has been a huge learning experience.
No.
But what,
Maybe like a collective or like democratic process.
No, I think
We all decided collectively that we didn't want to direct it.
I think what we kind of came to at the end, which worked out a lot better, which I don't know, we haven't had this conversation, but maybe what we would do is, what worked out a lot better towards the end is having a couple people who, especially because, and this is only learned over time and experience, people in this group are interested in various aspects of theater. So we're really lucky to, Kelsey and Catherine back in New York work in the theater that we performed this twice before. And so they know about the lights and they know about so many other things that personally I don't. And some of us, we're all bring so much more, and I won't go through what everyone brings. Everyone brings a lot. But what we learned over time is some people are more interested in directing than others. So when we started like, oh, we'll all direct, well, that doesn't always work because everyone has a different way of communicating. And towards the end, once we started kind of divvying that up, that seemed to be working. I don't know if we would continue with that, but I think that was our strongest, where we really let everyone kind of where their skills and where their heart is kind of pursue that, which only through experience did we learn.
Do you guys want to talk about it?
Yeah, just
Sure. Okay, so we did, now that I think about it, this is really weird, but it kind of worked well. We had everyone journal sort of what is it that you are looking to accomplish by being a part of this process. Once we knew who we were working with, we read through the play, sort of said, okay, what do you want to learn? Why are you here? What as an actor do you want to work on? What are there roles in this play that you do not want to play? You've played before. Are
Or
there?
that you would never be cast as that you want to play.
Yeah.
What
so
are
we-
you usually? What do you think you're usually cast as? How can we help you do something you wouldn't normally get to do?
Yeah, so we sort of then gathered all this information and just sort of pieced together, because there are so many parts in this play, and sort of crafted these arcs for each person that sort of, some of it absolutely was arbitrary when we get to the end. It's like, well, a million new people in the scene. You're gonna be this person, you're gonna be this person. But our goal in the beginning was really to give everyone something that they were interested in learning about. So.
And I think it should be said too that a lot of us in various capacities have worked together before. So we've not all worked on one project together, but we all knew each other well enough to be like, okay, so this is what, and we could have an open conversation about that. So we did things, we didn't even stick to what initially had been planned in some respects, and we had lots of conversations where we, you know, are you sure this is good? You're happy with this? Okay, we won't move forward if you're not happy with this. Something switched. And we did start with it was weird because we didn't plan 7 people, but it worked out really well. And it allowed us to do everyone to have a lot to work with, because even like Casca, I always find this amazing, after Caesar dies in the script, Casca's never heard from again. Where does he go? Don't know. So what we did is, in the second half of the play, there's all these characters, like so many named characters. And since we were really interested in, I guess, the relationships between these characters, Casca for the second half of the play is a combined character of, I don't even know how many, maybe like 4 or 5.
There are originally over 50 characters in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar.
37.
So we cut it, what?
37.
Well, it changes.
There are a lot. They're just a lot. And we cut it way down. And then, right, so we continued Casca's line throughout the show. And then we also, like the Lucius Caesar doubling we sort of did for the nice, you know, Lucius gets to kill Brutus at the end, which is cool. And then we also did some doubling for
Metellus.
Metellus
Yes.
has a lot of characters.
Yeah. We like created a character.
Yeah. Very much our own creation.
But we did put a lot of thought into it as a sort of integrated whole to see how we could make the arc make sense.
One of the first big rehearsals we had with this group, we went through and got like a giant piece of butcher paper and put it up on the wall, and went through sort of conceptually what are all the big questions or things in this play that we are each interested in. So everyone got a chance to write them down, and then we saw, and there was a lot of overlap and parallel, so we were able to figure out, okay, as a group, these are the things that we're really interested in exploring. And one of the first things that sort of jumped out of that all was the cyclical nature of this story, and the way and just the things that are repeated, and we're in these, everyone is in these weird cycles, and there's all these questions in the play about what time is it, what day is it. And so those were 2 things that really stuck out to me, this thing about time and then this cyclical nature. And it was neat sort of to be able to refer back to those, but I wouldn't say that throughout our whole journey we were always tied to those ideas, but those were 2 of the things that we were sort of musing around the whole time.
And something that kind of, I think, evolved perhaps in this production when we got a chance to do the second half of the play, when we started combining characters and creating closer relationship dynamics, was the sometimes conflict or the intersection point between a public obligation or an obligation to the state and an obligation to your personal life. I mean, we see 2 scenes back to back about that between Portia and Brutus, and Calpurnia and Caesar, and then in the story we've created, it's like all of these guys are friends, and they're all throughout the whole play still friends. And so what does it mean to have one friend say, like, look, I'm done, you need to kill me? Or what does it mean to like have to be killed by your friend, or see your friends kill your other friend? Like, it's very strange, and trying to weigh those 2 things and figure out how they can coexist and be dealt with.
Right. By being 7 people, that makes it a much more intimate experience. And I think the play is pretty daunting. The text is just like a weird political thing. At least for me, is this weird political like entity, and so making it this intimate, accessible, deeply personal, and deeply disturbing story was really powerful, and especially being able to do that in this space, I thought was really kind of this amazing gift, because we're now on the same level as the audience, we're in your faces, and on top of you. So thanks for giving us that space, and thanks to Lineage again. But we were, when we originally did this, we did it on a platform, which was nice, because one of the other themes we had talked about was levels and working with a lot of power struggles from, you know, different status, social statuses and classes. And being on the same level is actually really, really nice. Well, really quick credit, we had a sound designer who couldn't make it up here with us, but his name is Ryan Buchanan. He's a grad student at NYU, and he's wonderful. So that's where a lot of the soothsayer stuff came from him.
But the reason that the soothsayer was all of us, because we were reading through and got to it, and we're like, well, there's already 7 people on stage, so let's just all read it for now, and then after a while we're like, wait a minute, this might actually work. But then it became this really cool collective thing, and I don't know if we ever really, I can't remember a conversation where we specifically talked about this idea of fate.
Particularly with Portia. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because in our version, the soothsayer is not embodied by a single person. So she is hearing it in her head. And we briefly talked about how women are often the, buzzword, vessels for like supernatural things to come through or be channeled. And that's often how Portia is spun. It's like we didn't have a specific conversation about the soothsayer because it's just intrinsic in the play. It's part of everything, just like the Scottish play, and just like so much of Shakespeare's work from that time relies heavily, but uses that theme so often, and it was part of their world and their culture in a different way than it is now.
I think it's important to say that it's not, what we do is also, we combine not just the soothsayer, but Artemidorus becomes what the soothsayer is. So although maybe we didn't have the conversation so much, we did talk about how before Caesar is killed, there are so many.
There's like 3 or 4.
There's so many warnings. And also we talked about how it's really easy to overlook, but like things are going crazy. There's lions at the Capitol. There's all this stuff happening that is not of this world and really not easy to kind of digest as something that is true, although in the world of the play it is. And so at a certain point, we decided that this play, being able to do it with 7 actors and 7 women is an illusion. And it's all not, and then this thing is very like of not this world. And so at a certain point, I think we didn't talk about it as much as we just leaned into it. We were like, especially by the second act when we had to deal with the ghost, we were like, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna make the ghost come in? And then we were like, well, what if he just stands up? Yeah. And then it's like, okay, like that's, and as long as through the whole play, you get that that's the vocabulary for how this could be true. So I think that is how we did it.
There's no answer, like this could be in Brutus's head, or it could be like, or he could be like being, in what's it called when like a spirit comes into you? Possessed.
Oh,
yeah, like possessed. Like he could be possessed, or it could just be all in his brain. Like there isn't an answer.
So just many things you did not know Shakespeare was writing about.
The one thing I'll say though is there's this lovely like crazy supernatural element, but then the reality of killing someone is just so stark. It's a really visceral, just gross experience, and so and fast and easy. Like there's this weird easy aspect to it that freaks me out, and I think everyone here, I will speak for everyone. And so I think part of our use of the blood, even though it's like a sort of a cue for blood as opposed to blood, is that it makes it that visceral experience while still being employed in the supernatural vocabulary that we established.
My name is Ashley. I graduated from Gallatin in May, and my concentration was in acting, dance, and critical race theory. And now I actually work here as the development and programs director, and I'm a teaching artist.
I'm a junior at Gallatin, and my concentration is political theater.
And she's Catherine.
Oh, I'm Catherine.
I'm Kelsey, and I am a junior also. I'm also Catherine. Duh, we all are. And my concentration doesn't have a fancy name yet, but it's going to be something with text and movement, so in that zone.
I'm Casey. I just finished classes at Gallatin, but still have my colloquium yet to do. And that colloquium will be about the actor's artistic agency within the creative process, which is the fancy title that I've finally come up with, going into the deep end of like, what does it mean for an actor to direct and to take total control of that process. So that's how it's kind of fed into my concentration.
I'm also Catherine. Catherine Wilson. I graduated 3 weeks ago. My concentration was feminism and gender politics in theater practice. This was like perfect for me because I'm like studying theory and then applying it to theater practice, which is what this is. So it's like a little gift from heaven. And I don't really know what I'm going to be doing next. I have a grant to go work with some cool collaborative ensemble-based theater companies, or one of them. I just don't know yet. But it'll be great, and I'm going to learn a lot and do theater, maybe be a barista for a bit. Who knows?
Welcome to the life.
Thank you.
Welcome to the life.
I'm Rachel. I'm a junior. And the title that I've kind of come up for my concentration is historical storytelling, which is sort of a mixture of the study of different modes of storytelling throughout history, which includes a lot of dramatic art, visual art, music, as well as I'm interested also in the dramatization of history. I've taken also a lot of acting classes, and I have a minor in dramatic literature.
Nice.
Thanks.
I'm Annie. I graduate in May, and I can't remember the title of mine right now. It's on my